To get my congratulations on the record. I believe you have a policy, Madam Secretary, that you have to approve all contracts at your department over $100 million.
No, sir, I have a policy in place that I review contracts. My deputy chiefs have the ability to review anything under 5 million. Above that, I evaluate and look at.
Okay. And you do that, I understand, to try to curb waste and abuse of taxpayer money. Is that right?
Yes, sir. In fact, it's been extremely effective. We've saved the taxpayers over $13.2 billion just by evaluating contracts, negotiating lower ones, and canceling ones that aren't necessary to do our duties.
How do you square that concern for waste, which I share, with the fact that you have spent $220 million running television advertisements that feature you prominently?
Sir, the president tasked me with getting the message out to the country and to other countries where we were seeing the invasion come from, with putting commercials out that told them that if they were in this country illegally, that they needed to leave, or we would detain them and remove them, and they'd not get the chance to come back to America the right way. That has been extremely effective.
Ask you to run these advertisements, is that right?
We had that conversation, yes, before I was put in this position and sworn in and confirmed, and since then as well.
Okay. Did you bid out those service contracts?
Yes, they did. They went out to a competitive bid, and career officials at the department chose who would do those advertising commercials.
And the people that you ended up picking were people who had formerly done your political work back in South Dakota, is that right?
No, that's not correct, sir.
I think it is.
No, it's not, sir. The individuals who, I believe the careers who they chose were two different media firms. There's been conversation about their subcontractors, but we have no legal authority to look into subcontractors on work like that.
Okay. And you're saying that you're testifying that President Trump approved this ahead of time? Is that my understanding?
We had conversations about making sure that we were telling people.
No, ma'am. I'm asking you, sorry to interrupt, but the president approved ahead of time you spending $220 million running TV ads across the country in which you are featured prominently.
Yes, sir. We went through the legal processes, did it correctly.
Did the president know
worked
you
with
were going to do
OMB.
this?
Yes.
He did?
Yes.
Okay.
And one thing, Senator, I think would be helpful to know is how effective that communications has been. That
Well, they were
overwhelmingly
effective in your name recognition. I mean, I personally just, I mean, to me, it puts the president in a terribly awkward spot. And and I'm not saying you're not telling the truth. It's just hard for me to believe, knowing the president, as I do, that you said, Mr. President, here's some ads I've cut, and I'm going to spend $220 million running them, that he would have agreed to that. I don't think Russ Vogt at OMB would have agreed to that. It's something we have to defend. I'm on the Appropriations Committee. My research shows that you did not bid them out, that you pick, in fact, one of the people you picked, the strategy group, Safe America Media was a company formed 11 days before you picked them, and that the strategy group got most of the money, and the head of that is married to your former spokesperson. Look, we all have friends who are qualified. I'm not quibbling with that. It troubles me. A fifth to a quarter of $1 billion of taxpayer money when we're scratching for every penny and we're fighting over rescission packages. I just can't agree with, Madam Secretary. Are you still running those ads?
No, Senator, I did not have anything to do with picking those contractors. I know politicals at the Department of Homeland Security did.
I understand. Are you
Career
still running
officials
those
followed the
ads?
competitive bid process for
Are you
that.
still running
Everything
those ads?
I think the ads are due to end here in March, I think within a week
So
or two.
they
I'm
are
not sure of
still
the
running?
update. The one that is running is focusing on angel families. Have you seen that? It is the one that's talking about this is our why. This is why we work every day,
Okay.
is for the angel
I've gotta
families
move
and their
on.
victims that need to.
After
President Trump has removed Kristi-Noem as Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. Noem has spent the past 2 days on Capitol Hill as she has faced growing backlash over her job and handling of the Department of Homeland Security and particularly Operation Metro Surge in Minneapolis. The president announced she would be transitioning to a new position, given the title Special Envoy for the Shield of Americas, which will apparently head up a new security initiative focusing on the Western Hemisphere that the president will give more information on this weekend. We should mention that Secretary Noem is delivering the keynote address at the Sergeant Benevolent Association Major Cities Conference. In a post on Truth Social, the president thanked Noem for her time leading DHS and announced he is nominating Oklahoma's Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin as the next DHS secretary. So let's bring back Nancy Cordes, CBS News chief White House correspondent. And Nancy, you were talking about this with Major, but let's go ahead and go into a little bit more detail here about really maybe what was the straw on the camel's back. And that was in one of the days of testimony, Republican Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana asking Noem, how do you square cuts to DHS and contracts with the fact that you have spent $220 million running TV advertisements that feature you prominently in it? Noem replied that the president tasked her with getting the message out to the country and putting commercials out. If they were in the country illegally, they needed to leave. And clearly that was something the president took issue with.
Right, because she went a step further. And when she was asked, well, did the president know that these ads were going to cost $200 million? She said, oh, absolutely, he knew. And that's what the president is now telling advisors and reporters is incorrect. He said he didn't know how expensive it was going to be. But I do think, Lindsay, that while that was the straw that broke the camel's back, I think you could get a sense from more broadly the reaction to Kristi Noem in those hearings from not just Democrats, but from some Republicans, that she was really on thin ice. The fact that Tom Tillis of North Carolina was basically yelling at her, telling her she's a terrible leader and that she shouldn't be a cabinet secretary. The fact that John Kennedy, who's a big ally of the president, was willing to question her that aggressively about this ad campaign in the first place, all of that is a sign that they believed that she was pretty vulnerable and that even perhaps they believed that the president was okay with them putting her on the spot because he wanted to see how she would respond.
So this was almost like a test. I mean, why was the Tom Tillis interaction so significant to you if he's kind of been on the outs with the president and, in fact, isn't even running for re-election?
Yeah, I think it was simply the fact that he stated so clearly and forcefully what Republicans have said behind the scenes, which is that he just doesn't think that she is capable of leading such an important agency at such a delicate time. He just came out and said it. You know, he's been critical of the president before, but, you know, he was practically yelling at her. And, you know, and that wasn't the only controversy. There were also very aggressive questions put to Noem by Democrats, both in the Senate and then at a subsequent hearing in the House, about her relationship with Corey Lewandowski, who is kind of her right-hand man at the Department of Homeland Security, but who lots of signs point to her being in a romantic relationship with him as well. And she was put on the spot about that. Corey Lewandowski is someone who has a long relationship with the president of the United States, was a major player in his first bid for the White House. And yet there have been questions about how appropriate it is that she is working with someone who is, for all intents and purposes, a subordinate who she may also be in a romantic relationship with. So it was kind of the combination of all of that. And, you know, the clips of those questions at the hearing going viral that really hurt Noem, especially at a time when she was already under such scrutiny for the department's handling of the situation in Minneapolis, where 2 American citizens were killed.
CBS News Chief White House Correspondent Nancy Cordes, thank you so much. Let's bring in Capitol Hill correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns. So, Caitlin, you had some reporting this morning of some reaction from Senator Kennedy regarding that ad and his line of questioning with Noem at this hearing, and that he apparently had heard from the president. What can you tell us?
That's right. There was an extremely notable exchange during that Judiciary Committee hearing on Tuesday, where John Kennedy, a Republican conservative senator from Louisiana and a close ally of the president, pressed Noem on the agency's spending of over $200 million on television ads that prominently featured Noem. And he asked her whether those were effective in deterring illegal immigration and who approved the spending. And in that committee hearing, Noem, under oath, said that the president did. Now, after that, I spoke to Kennedy, and he told me that he was very upset about this kind of spending and had questions about whether the president had approved it in the first place. Fast forward to today, the president apparently called him, Kennedy said, after that hearing, and in Kennedy's telling, the two stories did not line up. Now, this is significant because as we've been talking about all of the kind of the lists of concerns that lawmakers up here have had about Noem, that exchange and the president paying attention to it seems, at least at this point, to be consequential. Now, I just was speaking with Tom Tillis, who's a Republican from North Carolina. You may remember him in that hearing. He was one of the first Republicans to call for Noem to resign. This is after Minneapolis. I just talked to him at length, and he said that her management was the issue here, that it's not personal, but that she showed that she could not handle this agency. I can also tell you that talking to lawmakers coming out of a lunch where they were just made aware of this news, they are very supportive, Republicans are, of their colleague who now the president announced will head DHS, Markwayne Mullin, a Republican senator up here. He left that lunch in the middle of it, and it appeared he appeared to be on the phone. So this is significant because he will have strong Republican support up here. They just need a majority, simple majority, to approve that. But this is going to be another confirmation battle up here on Capitol Hill to lead the agency at a time where there is no agreement on funding for the agency. So a lot of layers here, but bottom line, that exchange earlier this week with a Republican senator was very consequential when you're looking at the timeline of all of this.
What else can you tell us about Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma?
That's right. He's a Republican from Oklahoma, served in the House, serves now in the Senate. He is well liked by colleagues. He is a prolific presence on television. He is on air frequently as well, and a close ally of the president, campaigned for him as well. You can see on your screen there. And he told our Alan He earlier this morning he was kind of tight-lipped about all of this. A lot of people we've been talking to up here were learning information as it was being reported out. He told our Alan He, our Senate producer up here, that earlier today that he had confidence in Noem as long as the president did. And that was kind of echoed by lawmakers we've been talking to, asking if they had confidence in Noem. And their line was, well, she serves at the pleasure of the president. So it is notable, that kind of line of phrasing. So that was starting to give us some clues as to, this will be in the president's court here.
I mean, look, this just happened, but have you heard any reaction yet on Capitol Hill?
I was just talking to a Democratic senator from Maryland. I asked her about whether this changes the dynamics in terms of funding for DHS, and she told me no, that they still have serious issues with the way that the president is running immigration enforcement, that the buck stops with him, not necessarily Noem. So that's what we're trying to report out now. Does this change the fight over DHS funding? Because remember, Democrats had said they're not going to support long-term funding for the agency unless reforms to ICE are put in place. Those negotiations are really at a standstill right now. And there was a thought that perhaps if Noem were ousted, that could change the dynamic. At least in the early reading, my early reading from talking to Democrats right now is that is not shifting the conversation. We'll see what happens as they respond to the appointment of, or the nomination, I should say, of Markwayne Mullin.
Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you so much.